right, welcome everyone. Here we are at February 2nd. Hard to believe we're here in February of 2025. We have a fabulous panel here with us tonight. We have our very own John Bonzel, we have Jim Porter, and we have Karen Elkins. So delighted to be with you all here. And you know the drill. You know how this goes every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before we dive into, though, what we want to cover, let's go ahead and just begin with a moment of decentration as we pull up some ocean sounds that John graciously gifted us before. And you are welcome to either keep your eyes open and tune into the sound or eyes closed. If you would just take some deep breaths, becoming very present in where you are here today. Tuning into that universal heartbeat. Inviting in the glory of what will be unfolded here this evening. Perhaps even tuning into the light you see there on the screen. Feeling that love in your heart. And taking a moment to simply ground yourself in this moment. Inviting in all of the goodness that is here for you today. Take a few more seconds of deep breaths. And really drink in the glory that is called life here today. And when you're ready, open your eyes and let's tune in. Let's tune in. And so, John, I'm going to ask if you would please to take a look at this very first comment, or the quote through which this whole broadcast is actually based on. It's that quote about mediocrity.
You know, it's interesting. I was talking to Jim earlier today, and we were reflecting on just how long that we have been doing this. And this afternoon, I had some quiet time going through Unit 9 in the first lesson here. And it was wonderful to be able to reflect back as a beginner student and where I was, and to just kind of acknowledge what my understanding is today and to see how far that I have come. And it was kind of rewarding, and it tied into the lesson this evening. So it was a good feeling.
Perfect. So the entire show here is actually based on, inspired by this particular quote: mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed. And Jim, if you would just remind everybody the beauty of this next statement, please, because as we get into each deeper lesson, this is what we all want to remember.
If you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe. Not easily, but you can do it.
But you can. So please remember that this is a group of students that have just lovingly come together. We're focused on the home study course. You can find all kinds of more information about the works at philosophy.org at the University of Science and Philosophy, but we focus on the home study course. Who you see on the screen and those that are also not with us here this evening have a huge heart for the home study course. And this is 12 units. They're written by Walter and Lao Russell. Hello, Karen, Bonnie, Dee, and Deborah. So glad to see you all, including Linda and some of you that come back every single week. And want to remind you where we are here in February. In February, we're focused on Unit 9 that John just remembered. And so you can take a look at the overall titles right there. We're going to be going through those different lessons. But the next screen, you may want to take a screenshot of it. This gives you more detail based on what Walter and Lao Russell. This comes from the actual syllabus from the home study course, correct?
Yes.
And why do you think Walter and Lao created this to give us this much detail?
You know, some people struggle initially with the home study course and the writings and the meter in which the Russells wrote this. And they remind you time and time again that this is new knowledge, and you have to, acclimate yourself to the wording and the concepts because they're brand new. they're going to be brand new for another 1,000 years, for generations and generations. So, and it's important. I would recommend to everyone to just kind of, each unit that they open, go over the contents here to see what's in front of them, and go through it.
So just to remind everybody, if you'll take a look here, so the home study course is based on 12 units. Okay, they all look like this, and so there you can carry them with you. And I'll be honest with you, as you take a look here at even just the one, they're small. They look like they're small, but there is an amazing amount of density of wisdom and knowledge and power in each one of the copies. And so I have for now 3 years, every single month, I carry a unit with me. I study it. I drink it in. I invite in the love. I invite in the wisdom. And so what's such a blessing here is we have John and Jim that have over 50 years experience. Karen, who, although she studied the Russell work, she is the first time going through the home study course. I've been at this for 3 years. And Karen, before we dive into our Unit 9 here, what nugget did you take away from studying Unit 9 this time?
This one is knowingly working with God, but you in this body, like a car, you've got to turn on the engine to make it go. And so this one's inviting that conversation for you. If you want to have something, you've got to turn on that desire to make the car run. And it's you with that emphasis that makes things, that connection with you, with God, that makes it work. That was sort of the overarching takeaway, though there were many things in here, but that was one of them. It's, you have to work knowingly with God.
Okay, Jim, any just overarching thought about Unit 9 as we dive in?
Yes, that, and I'd like to read a paragraph and a half out of the Universal One. We are supposed to have been working through these past 9 units on mastering our meditation techniques. Mm-hmm. Some of us struggle with it. Some of us don't. Some days you have the flash, other days you don't. But the main thing that they pointed out for these first 8 units is it's the repetition and hard work of focusing on communicating with your inner divine. Because now they're in Unit 9, and they're no holds barred. They're telling you, accept your divinity. Understand that is your gift from Creator. It's yours to unfold and yours to bring out. Now, if that doesn't convince you, let me read a paragraph that Dr. Russell wrote on the very first page, Unit 1 of the Universal One.
That's my favorite book, one of them.
It's wonderful.
Yep.
Man conceives a perfect, omnipotent God. A perfect, omnipotent God could not create imperfection. He could not create a lesser than himself. He could not create a greater than himself. God could not create other than himself. God did not create other than himself, nor greater, nor lesser than himself. In the sense generally understood by man, God did not create anything. Nothing has been created. This is a creating universe, not a created one. Man's concept of the sublime being as the creator of a material universe, different in substance from the spiritual universe, is a misconcept. God is all there is. Beyond God, there is nothing. Superior to God, there is nothing. Inferior to God, inferior to God, inferior to God, there is nothing. Opposed to God, there is nothing. Creation is not more, nor is it less than it has always been from the beginning. It cannot be more than God, nor can it be less than God. Now, think on that. What they've been preparing us for is this unit, because there's a change coming. We've got to put away these thoughts of being a subjective slave to some omniscient creator that wants us to serve and worship him. God does not want you to serve and worship him. He wants you to manifest him. And that is what these illuminates throughout history have told us. And you need to be brave enough to begin to wake up to that, because you will get feedback when you start to share this with people. And it's your journey. Take it or don't take it, but eventually we all will. Thanks.
Very, very powerful words to start us off with. My goodness. Wow. Good evening, Cindy. Hello. Hello to everyone who is on with us. Whether you come in from Facebook, Instagram, or any of our other number of channels. And remember, the energy and love that we're pouring into this is available to you regardless of whether you're live or whether you are going back and listening to a video later on. So do know that for those of you that are new tonight, you can go back to our channel on YouTube, and you can see all of the live shows that we've been creating. The team you have here in front of you have been creating these now for a year, because we practiced for months. Remember, John and Jim, we practiced for months before we went live. And so we started officially last May. It'll take us all the way through the end of May, and we have some powerful things. So team, are you ready to dive into Unit 9?
Let's go.
All right, let's see. Today we begin. So let's start here with the very first outline there on the top, and it comes to page 639. Now, do remember, we encourage everyone to get your copy of your own home study course. We pull out just a few key things, and I'll read the first section. It says, the supreme question of all questions. How can I become a transcendent being, a being possessed of supreme power, knowledge, intelligence, wisdom, dignity, and character, a being who can give of great riches to the world and the glory of an abundant peace and happiness for myself? Yes, that is the supreme question, because that is what you and the world wants and needs to make a happy home for your family and an enduring civilization of happy homes for the world family. The answer is simple. It is to know God and be like unto him. So panel, who wants to jump in with any comment there before we dive into the next page? That's a pretty big opening.
Well, I think JC a couple thousand years ago told the people of it that time that the kingdom of heaven is within. They didn't have a clue what he was talking about. But the Russells are going to make it black and white for you here. And like Jim said earlier, you're either going to get on the train or you're not going to get on the train at this point, because the train's leaving the depot. Leaving the station.
I think that's a great way to say it, John. Leaving the Universal Depot. We're either jumping on or not. I really loved that question about how can I become a transcendent being. I can't say that before I studied this work that was ever something that was in my vernacular. I remember the word transcendent speaking to me over the years, and I didn't quite understand it. But I mean, that's a pretty powerful statement. And I actually loved the way it was tying in the knowledge, intelligence, and wisdom, and a being who can give great riches to the world. And to me, that's always what I've wanted, is not for myself, but so that we could give and multiply to others. So it spoke volumes to me.
Could I just add something to that?
Please.
To become a transcendent being, you have to transcend the senses.
Yes.
You have got to give them less importance, and to know that your body is not you. And in this lesson this evening, the Russells made that pretty clear as to who you are and what you are, where you are in the body, and how your thinking and so on operates within the body. So to transcend the physical, I think is the main thing to hold on to as we progress here.
Well, and so if we go to the bottom of the, on page 640, bottom of the first paragraph, I'm going to jump ahead where the blue brackets are, and it says this. It says, to become a transcendent being, one must climb that high mountain of life gloriously, rejoicing in the work of it, uplifted by the ecstasy of it, and ennobled by the conquest of it. So let's start there, because that's a pretty big sentence. What do those things mean? Climb that high mountain gloriously. Let's start there. What does that mean, Jim?
Well, it means that you realize that every effort, no matter how great or small, is an effort to climb, to awaken yourself. And that when you look at it as a negative or as a punishment or something being taken from you, you stymie your own progress. You become a body-oriented thinker. oh, this hurts, or this is too hard, or I can't do this, or it's not working. All the words we say to create the negativity that keeps us from achieving our goal. And even all that is a learning process. So you're going to get there. And then there's people that I spoke to on over the week that had a flash, and that is an adjustment too.
Yes, we will be talking about that, and I will be sharing some of that, and it was quite an adjustment. So, John, what does it mean rejoicing in the work of it? That is something that speaks to you quite a bit.
Yes. In your efforts to create, you should have one goal in mind, and that is to glorify God. Period. So when you kind of have that mindset, it's like you're going all in. You're not withholding anything. You're giving everything that you have to glorify. And then as we progress here this evening, the realization will be that you are that God that you are glorifying. So rejoice in the beauty and the work of your creativity.
It reminds me of that when you say that way. Do you mind if I just jump in there? That's kind of interesting.
Jump in there.
Yeah, it's the idea. It's like, don't do anything that you can't do extra special. Go out there and do it 100%. Mm-hmm. And then when we go, so that to me means to be glorious in what you do, to magnify the where you're coming from. And the other thing I was talking back to what Jim does, I mean, people forget that when you're a little baby, the many, 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 many steps we get just to be able to walk and hold a spoon. And so when we look at it that way, that is life's journey. And every step we take is just that next one. So, and that never ends. And then the cycle of the universe never ends. So you're never ending. So it's not about age. It's about always seeking that intellect and that knowledge so that you can actually be and glorify the wisdom, that insights. So anyway, that's what came to me.
Cool.
What was interesting to me is in the next paragraph. I want to point out just a couple of things. You'll see the paragraph right there on that page that I have the green bracket to the right. But it says, it is the work of knowing God in you by knowing his universe. To attain your full inheritance of God's power, it'll come up on the screen in just a minute, you must know the power which God uses to create his universe. And if you'll notice in 3 lines down, it says, to know through your mind, you must be mind, therefore awaken. And so I'd like everybody to circle, those of you that have your copy, therefore awaken. And I thought this was very profound because there are a lot of people right now talking about the awakening of humanity. And so here it is in the home study course from the 1950s, therefore awaken. Sever your senses from your mind by being mind. And so let's talk about that for just a moment, Jim and John, because
take a moment to point out how they can you bring it back up on the page back up? They wrote.
Go ahead.
To know through your mind, you must be mind. Therefore, awaken. Sever your senses from your mind by being mind. That's your goal. They're shouting at you. Here it is. No more fooling around. Get to it.
Well, and I love that they continue. They go into learn to stop thinking, meditate unthinkingly, and know. KNOW. Forget your body, be thus still and let God in. You will hear his voice within you. You will thus know his presence within you, and you will thus know his identity and your identity as one. And I will be sharing more about that. I love the way you did that emphasis, Jim. I thought that was very powerful. Karen, you wanted to mention something?
No, I didn't. I'm good.
Okay. All right. So, John, as we go into that next paragraph, the one there at the bottom of page 640, it says, do you deeply desire to become the transcendent being described above? If you'll read that next sentence or two and just comment on what's important from this bottom paragraph.
If so, you can ascend that mountain of life in the measure of your desire. The heights you will attain will be measured by your willingness to work gloriously and with love, and to know God's universe through knowing God's ways and processes for the purpose of recognizing them as your ways and processes. When you know that, you are working knowingly with God. You are walking with Him, talking to Him. He will be your moment to moment companion.
All right, that's incredibly powerful, John. And
Yes.
so as we're thinking through this, they were going into that next page, and it says to help you climb that glorious mountain of life is the sole purpose of these lessons. Now, this is very powerful to me because I've been saying for many, many years, climb higher is the calling card. That's literally what I've always had, this deep knowing that's we're here to do, climb higher. So I invite everybody in the chat box to please put down climb higher. And it's talking about, if you could, Jim, just bring up what's important from that particular paragraph. And definitely when it says start from where you are now, what's important for the group?
Well, that's exactly what we do. We start from where we are. We don't look at it as an unconquerable thing. We look at it as a journey, and we take joy, just as much joy in the journey as you do in the accomplishment. This is where people get lost. They want to be at the top of the mountain, but they don't want to glorify the journey. And when they don't do that, they become fatigued and tired and distracted, and they fail and they give up. The mystic already knows that they're at the top of the mountain, but they equally know that they need to have the sensed self do the work to get there. It's got to be transformed. It's got to be renewed through the climb and the awakening. There are stages to it. And how many times have they warned us? No big flashes. Don't desire it all at once, because you can't handle it all at once. Be grateful when you get little flashes and little awakenings. But I'll give you a quick example. When my oldest son was 5, we went out to a school, and there was a large field there that was a soccer field and the area surrounding it. And he turned around and he looked at us, and a smile crossed his face, and he just took off running. And I'm watching this kid, and my first instinct was to run after him and get him. Then something said no. And I just went along behind him, and he was running, and he would fall, and he would get up, and he'd turn around, and there'd be this ear-to-ear smile on his face, and he'd get up and he'd run again. That child ran until he was exhaustion, and he was still trying to get up with this beautiful smile on his face. He was experiencing the freedom of open space for the first time in his life, and he glorified it. That's what we have to hold on to.
So let me ask a question here. We have a question from Deborah, and she says, as we transcend the physical, is it still important to remain grounded in the earth, and how do we do that? I have a lot to say about that, but
yeah, I was going to say the question. Kimberly, how do you do that?
Friends and family, don't worry. There's people that have issues with you that will remind you that you're not all that you think you are. So bless them too.
Well, if I could just comment on that. In this lesson this evening, the Russells actually answer that for you. They say that you don't want to become just mind, because you occupy a body, and you just can't forget that you have a body. And it is a balancing act. I remember when I was in my early 20s, I was absolutely too spiritual. Didn't give a damn about anything physical, and desiring stuff and so on and so forth. And it stayed there too long, and then it kind of inhibited me from gaining and acquiring the things that, what we at the time think are important. So it is important to acknowledge the physical, but you're not that physical. So as long as you are able to make that separation, that your mind, you center that body, but that body is not you.
Well, and so Deborah, what I would say to you, and I'm actually going to be talking about a bonus broadcast that we'll do this week, because I did have some very interesting experiences over the past few weeks, and it is very easy to get lost when you are in that light, and it is so big. And it is of vital importance to remain grounded. And there's a number of ways that you can do that, and staying connected to nature and to the fresh air, and a number of ways just to stay there anchored in your body. And this balance that John's talking about, John, I think that's really important to bring up, because we do sometimes lose. Some people get so into the spirituality that they really cannot function in this world very well. And that's not what we're called here to do, correct?
Yes.
Dr.
All
Russell
right.
spoke on
So,
this many times. Many times he mentioned it, that to sit under the proverbial banyan tree and contemplate your navel just to receive enlightenment, and then do not give the gift of that enlightenment through yourself to humanity, is a waste of a life. It's balance between the two.
right. Well, and John, talk for a moment that there is available, and you listened to a number of Doc's lectures that they're available on USBs. And so if somebody wanted to listen to Walter's voice, why would you encourage them to perhaps purchase those USBs to listen to those lectures? Because you've done it for quite some time and you find them inspiring.
Oh my God, those lectures are so powerful. And it's beautiful because Doc is talking to a group of students the whole time. And you have 52, 53, and 54. And what's beautiful is that in these lectures, the next day, Dr. Russell allows people to hand in questions. And he will answer these questions. And it's just like we're doing this evening. Okay. And but they are so inspiring. I mean, I love those lectures. When I drive, I just listen to them, and they're just very powerful.
We will place the link in the chat box for everyone to know that you can have available those lectures. But I did want to bring that up because I know how inspired John has been about that. So to keep us going, this is a big lesson here. When we scroll down to the bottom of 641, I want to hone in on this fact. And you can see the yellow highlights. It says a mighty star is moving across the heavens at many thousand miles per minute. It's been moving like that for countless ages and will continue to do so for countless more ages. It did not always have that speed. It started, scroll up, James, you'll see a little star to the right. It began at zero stillness, and it will end where it began. Where did all of that energy come from? Why does it continue? Why must it discontinue? What is that energy? And so they go on to talk about what is that secret. And so I want to read this next paragraph in yellow and then ask the panel to comment. It says, what is the secret of a man's power? We'll scroll down, James. What is the secret of a man's power to multiply himself in such a manner that he becomes 1,000 men with more ease than when he was but one? Can it be that he multiplied some other power than that which man calls energy? Do you really know the meaning of energy? Do you really know why you attain greater momentum with less energy? So let's talk about this.
That one actually,
John?
No, go ahead, Karen.
No, that one, reading that and working on the video for tonight was really powerful because you can work with yourself in your own little head, or you can work with Creator, and you have the amplified of the entire universe working with you, and it's like a big wave that you have, as opposed to a little ripple that you create. That's just a really simple way. So
Kimberly, this is a good spot here to allow our audience to truly understand the word omnipotent, all powerful. So through desire, you are bringing forth unlimited power from God, from the universe. And it's your awareness of that. And later on in the unit, you'll see then they'll start talking about momentum. All right. So you build up. It's a building up process. It's just like your experience over the weekend. If you had a chance to get it a little bit at a time, and then you could, digest it and kick it around, it made it a little easier. But so when you realize that it is the intensity of your desire to access that unlimited power, and desire is the most powerful thing in the universe, and you have to know how to use it and when to use it. And that's where the word omnipotent is what it actually means, that fulcrum.
Well, and I want to encourage everyone who is watching here to write down the word omnipotent And whether you put it on a post-it note and really meditate this week on what that word means. Because when I first went through the home study course, there were so many big concepts. I missed the power of the, I guess I would even call them the three omnis. That's what Ken calls them. But this word omnipotent is a big word, and there's a great deal of power in that word. And to me, the only way I was able to really grasp what some of these concepts were to literally write down the word and meditate on it, because they're so big and so huge. So I simply wanted to bring that up. Jim, anything you want to add before I take us down to the bottom of page 643?
It goes back to what I talked about earlier. It's holding your focus on the goal, seeing it complete and done in your mind, and overlooking the fact that things may happen that may cause storms about you, much like when Christ came out walking on the water and the disciples were in the boat terrified of the storm around them. That's what takes you off of your goal. And what he taught them there, the parable lesson there is, keep your eye on the goal. The goal is get to the other shore, not to fear that you're going to die in a path. And then that's what we do. We set our mind on the goal, and then we go through the process of achieving it with the understanding that if something comes along that is distracting or fear generating, let it go. Put your mind on the goal. And that's how you build that momentum that is unstoppable. And eventually, things that would have stopped you dead in your tracks, you will blast right through with ease because you've got that momentum and focus now.
You know, Jim, that reminds me of when in the end of the chapter, it talks about the desire, the word is love. So when you love something so intensely, you can't stop. I mean, you're possessed. And so I think,
done.
Yeah. And I think adding that energetic understanding of that desire sort of punctuates that you don't give up when you desire something. You got to pick something you love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that love, let me just speak on that before I have us take our first break. So as my fellow panelists here know, I have had an incredible just a light experience over the past few weeks, and to where I had access to a great deal of knowledge, and even to the point of having complete knowing that my time was coming to an end. And I plan on sharing that story this week as an extra broadcast. But the reason I'm bringing it up here is because that desire to focus on love was the power that I focused on to move myself through it. And that power of love, what we're all talking about, that's what I'm being taught through this entire home study course. It is really about awakening your heart to where that love becomes your driving force in all that you do. Is that a fair way to say it?
Absolutely.
And I experienced that power in a way that I never have in this lifetime, and I look forward to sharing it with the group. So do want to go here to the bottom of page 643. This is a big lesson. Before we go to break, I'm going to ask John if you will read that last paragraph that's highlighted there on page 643 as it goes into 644.
All righty. It has been said by the mystics that motion once started never can end. If man could but become universal instead of local, he might have a different conception of his place in God's universe and the mighty power which is back of his every effort. For every man to use when he knows that power and knows that it is his to use. So there you have it.
Yeah, what does that mean, John?
You got believers and non-believers. Okay, now we can sit here and we could read all this to people and they can go, well, I don't really know what these people are talking about, but it sounds interesting, right? And then, we end the broadcast and they go about whatever they were doing. But if you believe in what you're reading, and if you believe in what we're saying, then now you can get something done knowingly, instead of just being the cork on the ocean, going wherever the currents take you, wherever the wind takes you. But this is the knowingness.
And that is the difference. So I want to bring up what Deb says first thing in the comments. She says, through desire, you learn how to ride the wave. Deb, there's a great deal of power in that comment. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. And I do appreciate her next comment. She said, this panel is effective in its balanced contributions. Thank you.
Well, thank
So
you,
we'll
Deb.
take that. we'll take that compliment. Thank you very much, Deb. This is our time for our first break. For those of you that are new, that we take a quick 3-minute break at every 30 minutes so that you can decentrate for just a moment. We will see you in 3. All right, if you're in earshot, if you will find your way back. Now, I will confess to the panel that this was such a big unit that it's really difficult to cover all of the concepts. So I have selected some. Feel free to take me back to a page that's important to you. I've had several of you reach out and comment to me. But I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to page 645. And John, it says this. It says, when you cultivate that awareness of universality, okay, right there, universality, you are becoming omnipresent in your identity and awareness of all, aware of the oneness of all identities. Your intellectual progress will become more rapid when you thus become universal in your thinking. So if everybody would write down universal in your thinking, that omnipresent universality is what we term cosmic thinking. So unpack this for us, John, and then Jim, I'm coming to you.
Well, here we go again. We're going to cover the 3 omnis. And now you're omnipresent. And what that means is you have now become aware that you are God, that you are holy mind, and you're in that presence, and you're there. So it will take something of some kind of act, to move you or pull you from that. But once you get in that, some people call it the zone. Once you get in that zone, it's easy to stay there because you found it and you know what it is. And when you're in that zone, now you have the power to do something, right? You can't be asked to do something that you don't know anything about. But when you're in that zone, God, and through your desire, God will give you everything that you need to accomplish what it is that you're wanting to do.
It's funny that you talk about that as in the zone, because I want to encourage everyone to watch a little movie called Soul, Soul, and it's about a tall, slender African-American gentleman whose passion is jazz, playing jazz. And it's a little bit of like a cartoon movie. I was surprised at the depths and the profoundness of it. I recommended it to several people. But John, they literally showed what it was like to go into that zone. That when people were able to move into that zone, whether they were in the heavens on the other side of the veil or whether they were here on earth, everybody could show up at that zone for exactly what you were saying, being accessing that omnipresent universality. So a cute movie I want to recommend to people. And Jim, anything you want to add? John, go ahead.
I was just going to add one thing to it. In the sports world, that term is used more frequently, and other athletes recognize that in other athletes. They're unstoppable. They just go beyond, the average, and they're tuned in, they're locked in, and their actions and their progress is so simple. It's without ease. It's without effort. And that's what it's like to be in that omnipresence with God. And it starts with you.
Well, I find that it can happen even in writing. I mean, Karen, I've been there, and I know you in creating. I mean, when you are there, it is just flooding through. It feels like an unstoppable river of information where it just whoosh into your psyche, and sometimes it's almost difficult to get down either on paper or writing out or trying to literally capture what's all coming in. Karen?
Yeah, there was an image when I was working on the video for tonight that really struck me, because it was like you're God is every particle, and you're one with those particles, and every time you make a step, everything in the universe is making a balance. So every time you make a step, it's balancing itself. So the fact that you're walking like in the cosmos and it's like responding to you with its little songs and stuff, it just seems really cool. I just love that that was a good image of you being one with it. Does that make sense? It was a really cool image. Anyway. So
I love it. And I love your enthusiasm for it, Karen. That's always touches my heart about you. So, Jim, I'm going to read another comment and ask you to chime in. It says here over there, on moving towards the middle of page 645, it says, man has no limitations other than those which he sets for himself and the measure of his knowing, and the measure of his desire to work with God as God works with him. For desire alone will gain him nothing. Again, we say we try to think in terms of omnipotence rather than in fractions of it. Grow into your consciousness the fact that all of the power of the whole universe exists at every point of it for your use and the measure of your desire for it. Can you unpack that for us, Jim?
Well, there's a story in The Man Who Tapped the Universe, Secrets of the Universe, which I really ask everyone. It's not an expensive book. Buy that book and read it. And I'm going to paraphrase because it's been a few years since I read this particular section in it. But there's a point where Dr. Russell is with a girl walking in New York, and they notice that there's a play coming to a theater. And she said she very much wanted to go to the play. And he looked over and he saw the crowd running around the block waiting to get tickets there. And his thought was, well, I neither have the money nor the time to do that. He conveyed that to her, and she said to him, well, you're apparently not the man I thought you were, because the man that I know would make that happen. And then he took the scolding well, and he got in that line. And he had no idea how he was going to get the tickets if he made it to the front before they were all sold out, and where the money would come from. But he just knew it would. And after a while, to shorten the story up, someone in the line says to him, young man, I have not time to wait here any longer for tickets. If I give you my name and address and give you the money, will you buy the tickets when you get to the window for me? And he said, well, of course I will. And then it hit him. And then he began to make that offer to other people in the line. And they began to give him the money and their addresses. And by the time he got to the front, he not only did have enough money to buy the tickets for he and his girlfriend, he had so much left that he was able to take her out for a wonderful evening on the town. That's how you know versus don't know. It's a
I'm
wonderful.
sorry that Ken missed that lesson this evening.
Oh,
There you go. Giving him a
Ken
hard
is-
time.
Ken is anchoring the kingdom up there where he and Kim are. He's doing his job.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. You know, I will share the link for some of this, but I thought this was incredibly powerful. And so I wanted to mention to everybody, it says, as we go back to the bottom of page 647 here, it says, you set your own measurements and your own limitations. The universe sets no, go right there where it says wow. Wow, James, go up a little bit. I had the word wow in blue. Keep going up. No. Go to 645 beside where it says the word wow. Up a little. Yeah, keep going. All right,
Wow,
right there.
James.
So, okay, so
Wow.
set your own measurements and your own limitations. The universe sets no limitations on you. So I want us to pause for a moment there, because this is something that humanity, in my perception, is really trapped by. We set our limitations because we are programmed to think that we're limited.
Yes.
Right,
And
so
those
how does
that-
that programming work?
Because it
John?
starts day one. You're programmed day one, you know, by your family, by your peers, by school, by everything. And you know, and then it's at some point in time you have to find something that triggers you to allow you to break out of that, to where you
Yes.
can just right. And
Yes.
and that's a powerful thing. It takes a strong-willed person to want to break through that. It really does.
Well, and as we go on, go ahead, Jim.
I can say in the writings of Khalil Gibran, Leo knew him personally, so did Doctor. He tells a story in one of his books about a young couple who were in love, and they were shepherds. And the young girl was betrothed to an older man, and a rich man in the village, who wanted to have her, and she was forced to marry him, and she was brokenhearted. And after a few years of being married to this not very nice person, she passed away, breaking the young shepherd's heart. But he knew in his heart and desired that they would be together again. Now, we would naturally think that would mean in heaven. But what he went on to explain is they were reborn at a later time in an area where they came together again, recoupled their love, and experienced what they were denied in the previous lifetime. So even if circumstances come about that seem to prevent you from achieving that goal, hold on to it, see it as done and yours, and it will manifest for you in this lifetime, this year, or another year. Don't let it go. Don't give up.
Well, and that does take some courage. I'm going to be talking about this week. It does take courage and having heart and believing in that. So let's jump
Jim,
down
that was so beautiful, Jim.
Oh my goodness. So let's jump down to page 646. And this was important because I find this is something humanity really struggles with. It says, without desire in him, however, and without a vision of that altitude which he desires to reach, and I encourage everybody to write in the chat box vision, he would never have gained the momentum which increased his power and reduced his effort, but would have had to continue the hard labor of expressing the energy which he himself was content to express while working alone without vision or desire. So they were referring to a story about a merchant. But I want to have us hone in on this word vision, because it reminded me of that scripture where it talks about without vision, the people will perish. And there is something that I'm really noticing with humanity. Even when I work with leaders, you would expect leaders to have vision. I am finding that there has been a loss of vision over the past 10 years, that people are no longer able to create a vision of the future that they want. And I'm not sure if it's because people are so overwhelmed. I'm not sure if it's because of powerlessness that has seeped into our culture. But I find that having this vision that each one of us are actually leaders of ourselves and of the new earth, because we are the ones creating. So I wanted to have us pause and just talk a moment about the power of vision, because that's incredibly important in today's world. John?
I would I would like to substitute two other words for that, and that would be goal setting. Unless you have something to attain or something to work towards, right? You'll never uplift yourself. You'll never get there. And that's why goal setting never ends. Well, it never should end. But if you're complacent and you're content with a certain level of understanding or in a job that you're doing, you're like, well, how many times have you heard this? Oh, that's good enough. I don't need to do any. That's good enough. Well, and that happens. All right. But with goal setting and with vision, it's an ongoing process. It's a building process.
So, yeah. So I'd like us to jump down to page 648, and it talks about this. It's the very first sentence says this: science does not unanimously accept the universality of mind. Okay, to most men of science, each man has his own individual mind. And to the many modern psychological and psychiatric thinkers, mind is an evolutionary growth which arises from the experiences of the senses. So I want to go to that next paragraph because it talks about the wave. And this is the one thing that I was really shown, as I'm going to share with you all this week. I was really shown about the importance of the wave, of how timelines are created through the wave. But it says this: it says, many have been aware of the cosmos as a wave universe, but few beyond the illuminates have conceived it to be a thought wave universe. So notice that phrase. And no one as yet, to our knowledge, has ever conceived it to be what it really is: a gravity controlled and mind imagined thought wave universe. All right, panel, let's dive into this, because he goes on to talk about the octave wave, but let's go in to talk about this issue of the wave. Who wants to begin?
I think Jim should.
Well, the gravity shaft that they're talking about is the stillness within each wave cycle. And that is what's controlling the height and the depth of each wave. Desire is what controls it. When it starts off, when it first begins to come in, it winds around that gravity shaft, and it can't reverse itself, and it can't go outward to zero. It's got to go inward. That's the creative thought process. And that is where the power is. All the power is in the gravity shaft of stillness that centers the thought, the concept, the idea. And the way that you manifest it is based on knowing that it will happen. Now, the universal one has got it down to a science. He calls it nature. Everything in nature is balanced and beautiful, and if it becomes slightly out of nature, it balances itself. Humanity is still struggling with that concept.
Okay, so we have a lot more to talk about here. Before I go to Karen, I do want to note Barbara says she's confused. So Barbara, we do want to mention something. We know these concepts can sound confusing, especially if you're a new student. I would invite you, do know that Karen spent a lot of time pulling together a video at the end, this visual journey that she gifts us with each week. And hang tight, because I believe that some of the visuals will really help with what we're discussing here. Karen?
Yeah, I agree. And so you remember those kid toys that are stacked in colors and they get smaller? There's a red ring and a blue ring and a whatever. Imagine Walter Russell's work like that stacked rings. Well, that stacked rings is how you compress, and every one of those is a chemistry, is biology. Everything is created, little particles dancing, and how it spins and how it spins it out. So that's also how your chakras work. So it has something comes in, it makes manifest, and by the time you get to the red chakra, which is the big one at the bottom, you've given it birth. So it takes color, it takes time, it takes a field of energy to make something manifest through these cycles of color and time. And they are like a prism. And we did talk about this last week. We did go through that a bit last week as well. And that's, yeah. So it's Just think of it as a kaleidoscope, compressing and uncompressing, making things in there in a crystalline structure. So everything is a shadow of light, making its matrix in the holographic universe.
All right. So, John, before you go, I do want to mention to everybody that's new. So, when I first came into the Russell work, and this was 3.5 years ago, the thing that I kept hearing from the divine creator to me was creation is child's play. So, Karen brings up something very important. I find that a lot of these principles, when you stay with it, you can actually go to a child's toy store and see some of these things, and you will begin to see these very complex subjects right there in the children's toys. So hang tight, because as we go through this, trust yourself that you actually know these things deep inside. John?
Hang on 1 second. 1 second, John. Remember, look behind me there. Can you see it up in the corner?
Nope.
No.
The duality wave. The duality wave.
Jim, it's too far away.
Yeah, you'll have to get it off the wall, Jim, while John's talking.
I will do that.
All right. John.
Well, I will try to do that.
For the lady that was asking the question, how she's having a little difficulty. So you say to yourself, can you see gravity? No. Can you see the results of gravity? Yes. All right. Gravity is the tool, the one tool that God uses to bring the invisible universe and made visible. All right. Now we're going to I don't want to get too heavy on her, but if she can just understand that gravity is the tool that God uses to manifest the physical.
Yep.
All right. Now we'll get into the rings and the octaves and all that later on, but let's just try to keep it simple for people.
Okay. So, Jim, I'm assuming you couldn't get it off the wall.
I would have to go get a ladder to get high enough to get it off of this.
So what happens to everyone who, many Russell students, is we all end up having posters and drawings, and you can order all kinds of posters at philosophy.org. But literally, like when I started studying this, I would get the posters and have them all around me, because what happens is, my experience has been, that as your aperture of light opens, as your ability to absorb light gets larger and larger and larger and larger, the more you walk by these things, I find all of a sudden the ahas come to you. So that's why when you talk with Russell students, you will find that they maybe started with a Man Who Tapped book, and then maybe they graduated to another book, and then maybe they got some posters. But I'm chuckling because Jim and John certainly. Jim and John, for those of you that haven't been with us long, Jim and John actually had a chance to live with Lao Russell, who for over 2 years, and are some of the last people alive on the planet who actually had that experience, right, John?
Yes, and it becomes more real to me every day. There's only a handful of people that can actually say they, resided with and knew a 360-degree cosmic conscious illumina. And it's a wonderful thing. It was a life-changing thing, and it was the foundation. She gave us a foundation to which carried us through.
So, Jim, I see you have one of your toys there. I've had one of those built. Please show it.
Okay. So this shows you the illusion that they're talking about. When I put forth the effort to begin to spin this, it's going to be spinning in a clockwise direction. But because the senses that we have are limited, we're going to see the illusion of duality going in both directions when it's only actually one. These are the little toys that teach you the science. These are the things that we hang around our houses. John puts in his shelves with light to remind us that we're living in a wonderful illusion that allows us to experience duality where there is none. And that lets us be the creative beings that we are.
I have not seen that. That is very cool.
Yeah. It is cool. Keep that with you.
Down, it shows this. Very cool. I haven't seen that before.
Yeah. It's been around decades. This one actually belonged to John. Yeah, and I stole it from him. So
So, Joey, I'm going to ask you if you'll come on camera. Joey is on our team behind the scenes, and he actually built us another one. Okay, so I've got to get a ribbon to be able to have this.
Oh, Joey, now look, Jim
there.
stole mine, man. Come on, help a brother out here, will you?
I'll make you another one. I'll make you one.
But Joey, if you would, okay, because our desire as a team here is we recognize how challenging some of these concepts can be. Our goal is to make this real. But Joey, the reason I'm asking you to come on, as I'm kind of linking this here, is you actually built this, and so you took the one that Jim had, and I'm trying to get it to spin. What did you notice as you were working on this? Because you literally had to have it come to life. So what did you see?
So when I was putting this together, what I really looked at was the just on the surface, the physicalness of it, and then sitting when it was sitting still. What did it do? How was it created when it was sitting still? And then once you put that in motion, you get a different effect. You get a different you see something different. Something else pops out to you. And it wasn't too difficult to figure out, but once your eyes open to it, was like, hey, that's really cool. I can make that.
John, I'm feeling left out. I don't have a toy, and you don't have a toy.
I know.
I'll give John's back to him since I have another. The name of this is called Spinfinity. It's very hard to find, but it is made somewhere out there. Or you can be a genius like Joey and make your own.
I'll be glad to make one for you.
It's like
so
the box spin.
So in all fairness, I want to give Joey a lot of credit here, because when I did first start to study the Russell work, Joey was one of those that I really did have a great admiration for. He's got a maker's, what do you call your studio in Greenville, South Carolina, Joey?
Yeah, it's a fab lab or a maker space.
Cool.
Okay, and so he is a bit of a genius in trying to create a number of these things. He has been with us as he's
a total genius. Yeah.
He's one making all these little toys for us, helping us figure these things out. And for both Jim and John, Karen, I'll send you some toys. Okay, I'll make a box this week. We're working on it, and our desire, to be honest with you, is to hopefully figure out how to make some of these so that you all can have them of your own, and that you can use them to teach your children or your grandchildren. So part of we want to show you this science doesn't have to be complicated. It actually can be quite powerful. So let's pull a comment from Karen. She says this. She says, I think that understanding the wave is essential for holding omnipresence in time. I've had it and lost it, which was almost unbearable because I didn't understand the movements of the universe. Very powerful, Karen. When I share the experience I've been through this past week, I've also found out the power of the wave. Any other comment as well? Any other comments?
Okay. One quick second, Karen. One very quick. Keep in mind that what's taking place here is we come in from the ethers into body, and for the first 5 or 6 years, the most of us are living more outside of body than in, and that's why children can perceive these wonderful imaginary friends and stuff. What happens is at about the age of 7, most of us move heavily into body and start to work outward through the senses. And that's where the distraction begins. And the whole purpose of that growing into adulthood is to learn to remember what you knew and then manifest it through your sense body. And that's how you re-enlighten yourself.
Okay, so there's a lot. Go ahead, Karen, before last comment before we break.
Just a quickie. I think Karen's got a name for this new toy, and it should go.
I thought so too.
So I think that needs to be noted. And Joey, I think you can start selling them. I want one. Spinfinity.
That's what it was called when I bought it years ago. Yeah, Spinfinity. Yeah.
So and even John's working on a toy to hopefully another way to be able to teach some of the things that we're talking about. So John, anything you want to say about that? Because our goal really is just to help inspire us all to realize that this isn't as complicated as you think, It sounds complicated on paper, but when you see it, John, you actually had things, you had broken something apart that you're trying to build that you hope to share with our students sometime soon.
Yes, it's a large cube, and it allows you to see. So when we say omnipresence, this cube, this mirrored cube, as you look into it, you'll see that it just goes into affinity. All right. And it allows you to try to envision, because the expanse of the universe is too much for people to take in. Dimension is really a tough thing to deal with. But when you can bring it into a little box and then allow it to expand and go out into infinity, and again, like I was saying, when you hear that term omnipresence, you'll see how God allows everything to be connected to everything else. So a point anywhere in the universe. Yeah, there you go, Jim. Maybe you can get it close to your camera that
Oh,
people
my
might
God.
be able to see inside there. Yeah, man. There you go. So
Well, that
Yes.
is nothing but mirrors reflecting on mirrors, light reflecting upon light. And,
Yep.
and one of the great things, I'll stop in just a second, John. This gets me so excited. One of the great things about this is when you look into it, the first thing you want to do is have your eye wandering all over the place at all the depths and stuff. But eventually you settle and you look to the opposite corner, and what you see is you in infinity, infinite potential looking back at you, its creator. And that's a shocking moment. Oh my God. This is what you're living in, folks, right now. An illusion that is in reality stillness. Thank you, John.
Woo! That's
thank you
a
for that
powerful
lesson,
statement right there.
Mr. Porter.
All right.
And that concludes our broadcast this evening. Thank you for tuning in.
So if all of you are watching this, so right before we go to break here, what we do want to invite you is to notice the fun that we have, because literally, like when many of us get together, these are the kind of conversations we're having, and the joy of knowing your creator at this level, the joy of finding things that can explain these supposedly complex subjects. And so don't worry if your sense mind doesn't understand what it is. You deep down know it because you are it. You already know. It's a matter of us awakening to that knowing. And so please drink in the joy and drink in the fun. And Rita says, heavy stuff, Jim. Drink in the sheer elation that you see on the faces of your panelists here, because we spend so much time each week preparing and getting ready to share this joy with you. Stay with us. We know that Unit 9 is a big unit. It doesn't matter if you take away just one thing or even two things out of it. We're here for an infinite number of lifetimes to understand what's actually captured here. It is time for our break. We're a few minutes past the hour, dear ones. So let's just go ahead and take a stretch. You need to decentrate, and we'll see you in 3 minutes. All right, it's your shot. If you will lovingly find your way back to us. So to the panel, I'm going to be jumping ahead to page 652 because we know this is a big unmute. I do want to mention a comment from Karen, Karen Mahen. She says, when I really started working with nature, it was super difficult to think it wasn't real or as an illusion. Without the science of motion, I become lost. I got stuck in this work until this work came back to me. And John, you would actually say that it's really all about stillness, and that motion, the Russells say that motion is the one that's the illusion.
That is correct. And people need to, if you can just, I mean, you talk about a breakaway moment for people to understand that the entire universe of matter is nothing but motion. It's an illusion. An idea never leaves mind. And for people to, it'll help people to get a hold of their emotions. You know, you get upset over things, right? You attach certain values to things and you're like, well, wait a minute. Why am I getting upset over that? Because it's not even real. So why in the hell would I waste all my time getting angry at something or that type of thing? And it's a progression. This thing of, omniscience and omnipotence. And that's why the Russells laid the groundwork in this home study course for people, because it's a gradual ascension. You just don't wake up one day and go, oh, I'm God. Well, you can say that, but but it's an awareness. It's a gradual thing. You've got to work your way into it or up to it, however you want to.
Well, and it is from my experience, is that when all of a sudden you have that much awareness, in a human level, it can get a little confusing because it is so massive. It is like literally walking into a library, and if you see one person that's reading a book to a child, when you have that opening, it's like hearing 1,000 books being read all at once.
Mm-hmm.
That is what my experience was. It is like 10,000 books being read all at once. And so imagine having all of that information accessing to you. So incredibly powerful. So let's go ahead and jump to page 652 if we could. And
one thing real quick, Kim, real quick, I want to jump in here. We talk about it being an illusion, and sometimes that might come across as if it doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. It's a grand and wonderful illusion allowing us to manifest divinity. It has function and purpose. So don't think that this isn't great. It is.
Well, and that's really important, because when I share this week on the extra broadcast, and I was actually told and given very clear insight that my time to exit the earth was going to be happening this past week, and I'll share exactly what happened. And so when I left, I really thought that was the end. And coming back was a little bit like having It's a Wonderful Life moment. And Jim, exactly what it taught me was that even though this was supposedly all an illusion, the love I felt for the pieces of the illusion that I had taken for granted before was enormous. So illusion is an incredible experience that we are having, and all of the joy and the emotion and the range that goes with it. It is precious. It is precious indeed. And I found myself coming back to almost like that scene in It's a Wonderful Life when he returns to his house and the little knob falls off the staircase and he kisses the knob that had just driven him crazy before. The small things that make this illusion is really quite powerful.
Zuzu's petals. that was the thing I remember. Zuzu's petals.
650, yes, Zuzu's petals. 652. So if we could read what's that in the circle of blue, John, your climb.
Yes. Your climb to your own goal can be eased by your knowledge of the nature of this universe and your relation to it. That is why you will profit by acquiring this knowledge. Let us therefore devote a few pages to an application of knowledge thus gained to your daily life. You want me
Now,
to
it goes
continue?
on to say this, John. I'm going to have you comment after I read this next paragraph, but it says, you should now fully comprehend why it is that God gives you that which you desire when you work knowingly with him to manifest yourself in him. You should likewise more fully comprehend Lao Russell's meaning in her book, God Will Work With You, Not For You. When you know that he fulfills your desire. So Karen, I'm going to have you read this highlighted yellow sentence, because this is what you started off with today about how it was so powerful to you. When you know.
When you know that he fulfills your desires as surely as you know that your car will run when you turn on the switch, or that you will be illumined by the light when you plug into the generator of God's powerhouse. Yeah, that's where. Yeah, that was the whole. This thing, there was lots of punctuations in this one that drove a lot of visuals home for me.
And it says, then you will also as surely know that when you plug into the universal generator, and I mind you, it is powerful, with the knowledge of the source of that power, you will be more able to use it. It's conceivable vastness than if you had but a small measure of that knowledge. And I thought this was really interesting. So we all know of Niagara Falls. So let's think about that in our head. Niagara generates great power, and you know that it is dependable if you plug into it. But you must know how to plug into it. That power has been there for millions of years before men knew how to plug into it. The entire power of the universe awaits your use of it when you know how to plug into it. So, John, comment on that, and I'm going to Jim. The entire power of the universe.
Yeah, it's almost mind-boggling to think about that. And we've been talking all evening about your personal experience, right? And it was a flash, and it was just a tiny bit. Now remember, Doc spent 39 days and nights in his grand illumination, and before he came back into his body, God said, "Look, what I have given thee is but a thimble of your oceans of knowledge." So you can't get it all at once. And you don't want it all at once. But know that it's there, and it's awaiting whatever your desires are. So God will give you all that you ask for, and then it's up to you to do with it as you will.
What I find, though, John, is that many people are afraid of power. And what I've had to work with a number of people is to have them really redefine their relationship of power, because it seems to me that many might have had experiences maybe in past lives of abusing power, or they have little faith in power of today's world. But we're talking about power in a way to be able to use it in a way that's uplifting, or Jim, help me out here. I mean, this issue of power, I think, is one of those issues for people to sit down and really meditate on.
It's an adjustment. As we read through each of these books, first time or the 100th time, you're constantly making an adjustment and absorbing the potential of what you are capable of. And then every once in a while, someone gets that flash. And it's both overwhelmingly magnificent. It's ecstasy multiplied, but it is also an adjustment to the body. You've soared way ahead, and the body's back there in its sense self, trying to adjust to that light that now you are bringing into it. And it can take weeks. Dr. Russell, it took months after his grand illumination to be able to fully function in that body of his, because he understood how grand he was in his divineness. And he's trying to focus that grand divineness into an individual body. And I would jump to the conclusion that even when I read the Bible as a child and as an adult, I would notice that they would talk about how Jesus would simply disappear and they'd find him alone somewhere in contemplation and meditation. Years later, I read a book about another illuminate, and he explained that the reason Jesus had to do that was to keep his body from literally vanishing with the light of the divine that he held in it. He had to go out and ground to keep that.
Yes.
And this, so and that's a Christ conscious imbued body. So imagine what, if he had to take the time to do that. Of course we do when we get our flashes. And
Yeah.
so go ahead.
Kimberly, I wanted to
John?
just, I wanted to help give our audience an example of what you're talking about. I think there's no better example of power than Star Wars. And they call that power the Force. And you got Darth Vader, right? And then you got, what's his name? Luke Skywalker, right? And so you can take that power and you could use it for whatever you want. God doesn't care. You know, there's no good, there's no bad, there just is that power. And whatever you choose to do with it is your choice. But remember, right? Remember the pendulum. God gives you 4.5 swings of that pendulum, which is all yours. You do what you want with it. But his 4.5 swings of the pendulum, he controls. So I didn't want to think that you can just do whatever you want with the power and there's no repercussions or things if you do, you hurt and take and that kind of thing. But I think that's that's the easiest example I think people could maybe use to.
Sure. So I want to bring up, Bonnie has a comment here, and she says this. She says, this has been something right before me that's like a door that needs to be opened, and I can't make myself just touch the doorknob. I've known all of this for so long. This encourages me. Bonnie, you are completely right about that. And even when I share my experience later on this week, it is a choice to open the door and to go through it, to lean into the experience, because from a human perspective, I'm going to get very granular when I share the experience this week, because each moment was a choice to lean farther into it. And I believe that there's many, many of us that are ready to open that door, Bonnie. But when you don't understand what's happening, it can be overwhelming and scary, and it takes a level of courage. So thank you for being so vulnerable. Okay, so I'm going to move the team here. We're getting to the end of the broadcast, and there's a lot more pages, so I'm going to try to highlight here. On page 653, I thought this was important for us to land, and I'm going to go to the highlighted section in the middle. It says, you must always remember that desire for knowledge and power focuses in your mind. Desire will give its fruits to you only if you first give love out from you in the measure of your expectancy. For the power which holds the universe together and controls its balance interchange is love. Love is the spiritual name for that power. Its scientific term is gravity. So pause for a moment. And because love equals gravity. So if you'll go ahead and just put that in the chat box. So pause for a moment, because I thought this is important to land as we go into the other chapters. Love and gravity.
Kim, 1 second. I'm sorry. I've got to jump in here. This Please. Is where John's supposed to bring his humor in and say, do you grasp the gravity of the situation?
Oh, my goodness.
That was a good one, Jimmy. For an old fart, that was pretty good.
So it's important for us to know that when they talk about love as a power source, love is gravity, and gravity. So talk about this for a moment before I jump ahead to the future pages. Karen, you want to chime in, and then Jim?
No, I have that in the visual, in the video.
Okay. So I want to go ahead and jump down to 654. You're going to see in the blue brackets, it says Jesus was a master scientist. He was illumined with all-knowing in the light of cosmic consciousness. Any man can do what he did when he has cosmic knowing, just as Jesus had. And any man can heal himself or others to the extent of his knowing. Jesus received his illumining in the light of cosmic consciousness from God alone. It's quite true that Jesus said, what I do, you can also do. To which we add, when you are what I am and know what I know. That which we have added to his meaning is what thousands forget who believe that they can do what Jesus did. Now, what's interesting about this as we finish up here this evening is that many, many people believe, with the current awakening that's happening in humanity, that there are going to be many, many that have these kinds of gifts. Jim?
Yes, there are, and someone in this council just experienced a little bit of that. So yeah, and this transition is taking place. This is what we're all feeling. Around the world, people are making leaps forward. For them, it could be a giant leap. For someone else, it might not be that impressive. But the leaps are being made and man is turning. It's like we've had our back to the light and now we're beginning to turn and see it and move toward it. And we're no longer allowing the distractors in the illusion of darkness to pull us toward that darkness. We're turning around. They're feeling it. We're feeling it. And
Yes.
humanity is being uplifted as it happens. And yes, there's going to be illumination popping up all over the place. This pot is beginning to boil.
Well, and that's part of why I'm going to do the broadcast later on this week. We'll announce it at the end about what my experience was with a mini illumination experience, because Jim, I agree with you. This is one of the very first things I said to John when I came into the University of Science and Philosophy. And I said, John, I believe that many, many people are going to be having experiences like what Walter Russell had, and they're not going to understand or know what to do with it. That more and more light is coming into the planet. The aperture is opening, and that if people don't understand what an illumination is, they're going to be very, very confused. John, you remember that conversation? That was part of why I wanted to come there and invest in time, energy, and dollars, because I know that time that Jim just referred to is here.
I wanted to refer to Neil Armstrong's quote with what Jim was saying. Remember when he landed on the moon and he took that first step? One small step for man, but one giant step for mankind. And that's how you can kind of see what's happening here. You know, it starts with an individual, and then it multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. And that's why there could be, and that's why people may be feeling an accelerated.
Yes, they are. Within. They are. And it's good, and it can be confusing if you are not ready and understanding what's happening. Because even me on this broadcast, on this team, my panelist here saw me struggle with what it is that I was experiencing, and so that's part of why I have been led to share that. So Karen, I'm going to have us jump down to the bottom of page 660, but I know you have to leave us in just a moment. We will be wrapping up this episode with your visual journey, but anything you want to say before I finalize and read this last section and show this last image?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, all right, so here we are. So John, if you'll read those first two sentences, please. The journey of life.
Yes. The journey of life is to find that awareness of divinity, knowledge, and power. To live life gloriously is to forever transcend oneself during the whole journey of life.
Jim, if you'll read that next sentence, please.
To know life thoroughly, to know life thoroughly is to To know life thoroughly is to forever feel the ecstasy and joyousness of the pulsations of the universal heartbeat, as they are always reflected in our bodies by the universal thought waves at their constant universal speed. To live with mind,
go ahead.
To live with mind and body of man so thoroughly attuned to mind and body of God that their balance is absolute is to know the glory of being one with the one being whom we are whom we are to the extent of our knowing. And there it is.
So James, if you'll scroll down so we can see the image, I'm going to mention this. It says, if you would ask of God the supreme question, he would say unto you, all questions are answerable in the light. Thou art light. Thou canst answer them. And then this image here, I would encourage you to take a screenshot of or even take a picture of, because as we wrap up today, John, comment on what this image is, because it is one of the core principles of the Russell teachings.
So we look in the center, you see the word one, and that one is God. All right? So God is all there is. All power, right? We talk about the omnis all the time. So the universe, the seeming universe, is a two-way expression from the invisible to the visible and visible back again. And I'll tell you, I was reading the other day and listening to Doc, and to know that everything that we sense in this universe is borrowed from God. And at some point in time, it must be returned. But that process is ongoing and it is forever. Because as the power comes from the one and returns to the one, it's an endless cycle. And that's beautiful. And that way, fear of the unknown can be eliminated from people's thinking if they just understand that life and death are beautiful in their own right because one gives unto
Yes.
the other endlessly.
Yes.
If you're also
Jim,
to
any
take a
comment?
moment, pardon me?
Go ahead, a comment.
Yeah. If you go back in your mind to the picture that we showed in earlier units of the Divine Trinity, of a God at center, male, female on either side of it. That's what you're looking at. You put the male on the power is from the one, the male, and the feminine on the power returns to the one. That's the feminine. Each is dominant in its state of being, and each is equally balanced with the other in their oneness. So you'll see it all over the place. But if you have the ability at home to put that image above this image, then it really will start jumping out at you in your meditations. You know that all you're doing is manifesting divinity to the degree that you know it.
Okay, very powerful stuff. So everyone just kind of breathe in and relax. Just relax, because Karen did spend a lot of time pulling together this visual journey. Do remember that all of our visual journeys are on YouTube even after the session. So the comment we receive most often is, wow, I wish we would slow down on this. Well, these are big concepts. And so remember, you can watch this as many times as you want. You can pause the video as many times as you want. But for right now, it is a lovely wrap-up gift. Karen, any thought before we start it? Because I know you'll be leaving us once it's underway.
I did make them longer.
Okay. Karen, heard you.
I did. I put pauses, more pauses in between, so they're going to take longer. But at least, yeah, you can breathe.
All right. So sit
Right.
back and enjoy and trust yourself that you'll take away exactly what's needed. Let's have the visual journey for the youth.
Thank you.
Hey, Karen.
Bye.
Wow.
Okay.
I tell you,
Oh,
some of
almost
those
left my
images are just
body.
incredible. What, John?
Almost left my body. That was just wonderful.
It was. In fact, I'm actually going to talk to her about maybe creating a calendar, because some of those images were just such profound depictions of some of these concepts. Truly,
Yes, and
truly
her
powerful.
music was absolutely perfect, and I loved how she slowed it down and let the writing come in a little slower. I thought that was just beautiful.
So such a gift that she gives us every single week. And so we have a question before I do my final announcements here. Deborah says this: if gravity is love and God is love, is gravity a living force?
No,
Tell us
gravity
more.
is. Gravity is a synonym for God. God is. Okay? So we have to, you have to allow yourself to make that separation between mind and matter, mind and motion. So when you say a living force, well, there's nothing that is not of God that God doesn't center. All right. So I wish she would be a little more precise in her question there.
Yeah, God doesn't force. God is.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's a lovely way to say it, Jim. A lovely way to explain it. Okay. Love that. Thank you so much for asking, Deborah. And everyone,
Yeah.
please keep giving us the questions. We'll take a look at there in the chat boxes, even on the later on the YouTube channels. As we wrap up here, just a few things that we want to mention. I want to thank everyone who's been just giving small contributions. We always list that each week. So a gracious thank you. That's very, very helpful. It just goes to the expenses. We've been pouring this out personally for well over a year now. We also want to encourage you to please still get a copy of the home study course for yourself. So you can do that at the Awaken Your Genius funnel. If you want to apply for funds, though, for a scholarship, John, what can they do when they go to the philosophy.org website to apply for a scholarship?
Yes. Um, it's just a simple process. You fill out a few questions, and then it goes through an approval process, and it's that simple. So if you're struggling a little bit financially or need a little shot in the arm, the scholarship program was designed for you. So don't be bashful. Get on there, apply for it, and get your home study course.
All right. That's after is getting that home study course. It is truly, truly remarkable. And so I'm going to ask James, if he would, to bring up slide 11, and want to remind you all of where we're going over this next week. So we will continue this conversation around a unit 9. Our next official class is next Sunday. We're February 9th, where we'll do lesson 34. However, I did want to mention to you that on Tuesday evening, I have asked James to work with me to do a bonus session. It'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I am going to share with you my mini illumination experience, including near-death experience. It was very, very evident to me. If we'll go back to full screen, I was given, when I was in that light, given a great deal of knowledge about what was unfolding this week. And I know that I was part of a targeted effort to create a mass casualty event very similar to 9/11. If you look at the airplane crashes that have happened this week, there have been an unusually high number, and I experienced my plane being targeted not once but twice. When by the time I actually received the knowledge of what did happen in DCA on Wednesday night when I returned home, I was in shock, and my team helped me process some of this, and it made me realize what has been unfolding. So it was a very powerful experience, a challenging experience, and gave me a great deal of insight into ascension, into what it means for us. Sometimes I think when we read back to Walter's ascension, it can feel very far removed. And so this is my attempt to share just a mini glimpse of what happened to me. I'm going to share exactly how it came to me, how it unfolded, the information I was given when I was told that it was time for me to exit the earth plane, how I processed it, how I focused on love, how I used the Russell knowledge to go through this process, which was very, very big and overwhelming, and then how I processed it as I came back. So it's simply an extra broadcast to offer understanding, and I'll tell you why I was encouraged to do this from the Creator talking to me, is that we've been talking for months now about seeking the light and seeking illumination, and even I didn't realize what I was inviting in. So I say to my partners, John and Jim, and I told the team that they didn't have to be on with me, but if they decide to, I'm going to give the first part of the broadcast sharing my experience. And for anyone who wants to be on there with me, they can correct, adjust, redirect my interpretation of the experience as it relates to the Russell work, because that is what I want to target into that. Hello, Bruno. Hello, Rebecca. Hello, Cindy. So that's what I'll do on Tuesday night, and that will just be my gift and use it for what it's worth. I will tell you, I was given very specific insight into the ascension process, and there's some nuggets that I think I really have a deep knowing would be helpful about what it is that humanity is going to go through. So I will ask your forgiveness as I bumble through it on Tuesday. It was a very emotional experience that I'm still processing, but I'm going to be very honest and very vulnerable about it all. So very powerful. So a gracious thank you to everyone that is on our team. Hello, Bruno. Hello, Karen. I appreciate the love. And so we'll see you on Tuesday. And for the rest of you, we'll see you on Sunday night. A gracious thank you to all of our panel. And we won't say goodbye. We will say until next time.